Good morning this morning. How are you this morning? Just perusing the news, as I tend to do on the morning. And I find this article, Trump threatens to designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorists. Interesting article, and kind of touches on something that I've been aware of for a while, and I think most of you are also. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and let's get right to it. President Trump threatens to designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorists. U.S. President said on Sunday that he will launch a new anti-drug advertising campaign to show the physical impact of taking drugs like fentanyl, and repeated his threat to designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations. That's not just an idle threat, and he's not talking about, as this article does go into, basically a second Just Say No campaign from the 1980s, which was effective to a point. Certainly got its share of derision and mockery. Justifiably in some places, but not totally. But at the very end of this article, the very end, the last sentence is the important part. Trump's official election platform says that when he takes office, he will order the Pentagon to use special forces, cyber warfare, and other covert and overt actions to inflict maximum damage on cartel leadership, infrastructure, and operations. That sounds like an actual war. Are we going to declare war on drug cartels? Are we going to declare war on Mexico? Are we going to invade Mexico? Is that the plan? Well, a few years ago, I became aware of Peter Zeihan, and I know quite a few of you know his work. He's a New York Times bestselling author and a geostrategist working in geopolitics, resource usage, demographics, a lot of different things. But one of the things that I became aware of in his writings was his ability to kind of tell the future based on demographics and trends. And one of the things that he is actually predicting is, unfortunately, a second war with Mexico.
And for you guys, I would be looking for your next conflict maybe a little closer to home. Now, here's the Mexican demography. It is one of the healthiest in the world. Now, about 25, 30 years ago, they started operationalizing NAFTA. And for the first time, Mexico started to really industrialize. People moved off the farm into towns to take the manufacturing jobs. So it has dropped down, but it's not nearly as steep as almost every other country in the world that is facing some degree of population collapse this century. If that trend holds, Mexico in 2060 will look about like we do now. And then they can start stressing about things like population structure. But for now, this looks pretty good. And that has allowed Mexico to do things that no one else can do. This is an export graphic. Everything on this side is what Peru exports, and everything on this side is where it goes. And this is pretty typical for a developing country, and doubly so for one in Latin America. They produce a lot of relatively low value-added products, and they export most of it to the industrializing economies of East Asia. So this is Peru. The value-added industries that we think of as manufacturing are these guys. They make up less than 3% of their export portfolio. And again, this is typical. This is Peru. Here are our Mexican neighbors. The Mexican economy is larger. The Mexican population is more value-added and more skilled. And the Mexican export portfolio is more advanced than the entirety of Central Europe. Mexico is the only country on the planet we need from an economic point of view. It's the only one we can't turn our backs on from an economic point of view. Think of Donald Trump. Think of what he said during his campaign the first time around about Mexico. Some very not nice things, I might add. Within a year, even he realized just how critical the relationship was. And the result, among other things, was NAFTA 2, and the friendliest bilateral relationship we have had with Mexico since its foundation as a republic in the 1800s. There are a lot of things about Donald Trump that I'm just like, oh, but wow, he was dead on that one. Which means that we need to pay attention to Mexico in a way we have not. This is the Mexican population structure. This is just a flat out population density map. Take a look at Texas. And this is broadly what we think of in the United States when we think of normal. You have a dense population center surrounded by suburbs and then speckles of small towns beyond that. Why? Because it freaking rains in America. You can have small towns because that's where the farms base. But look at Mexico. You get sprawling cities in the 1,000 miles from the border south, and then nothing. You don't have the population density of a downtown core because it was never an entrepot system like we have in Dallas or Kansas City or Des Moines. They're isolated from one another. Now, from an economic point of view, that means that Mexican labor is in limited supply. There is no hinterland to draw upon. So the first movers who take advantage of Mexican labor are the only ones who really win. That's one of the reasons why we're seeing the greatest industrialization push in this country right now as industrialists relocate manufacturing plant from East Asia to North America. They're starting to realize that the Mexicans have become a precious resource. But it also means that you guys face a complication. Cartel control map. Now this is from 2015. You guys remember El Chapo? He was kind of badass in a terrifying way. El Chapo was not your normal kingpin. This is not the Sopranos. He didn't run a mob boss operation. He kind of ran a Korean-style conglomerate. He would bring in all of his regional commanders a couple of times a year, and they would compare notes. And he would lay down a few basic laws. Don't engage in petty crime. Don't steal widowers' pension checks. Don't mug people. We are drug smugglers. Focus on our core competency. And if you want to branch out, you have to clear it with me first. So people come in and say, well, what about methamphetamines? He's like, well, what about methamphetamines? He's like, well, we can get this from this and this from this, and we can run along the same routes to the same distributors in the United States. Approved. What about cocaine? We can't grow cocaine. Oh, but with a grant from USAID, we can do hybridization. We can probably grow some in Sinaloa. Approved. That's how he ran the place. So in 2016, he became our wanted #1. And we got him. And then he got away, and then we got him again. And now he's in prison forever. Removing that personality, the manager, the guy who saw drug smuggling as a business and not as warfare, changed the map. And here's where we are now. The Sinaloa was the orange. The blue is Jalisco New Generation. They used to be the enforcers for Sinaloa, and after El Chapo fell, they went into business for themselves. They see the drug business as a war. They see intimidation and mass murder as an end and not just as a means to one. Now, this would be bad for any number of reasons. You guys hear about the avocado ban that's in the country right now? That's Sinaloa, that's Jalisco New Generation. They've expanded into parallel industries, agriculture, transport, tourism, local government, and they are the single biggest organized crime group in the world right now. But their presence north of the border is almost non-existent. But here are the plazas. You'll notice that they are now all split authority. Jalisco New Generation is challenging each pre-existing crime structure to get control of the plazas. American strategic policy on the drug war has kind of an echo of American strategic policy on Afghanistan. When we were in Afghanistan, if we saw two jihadist groups going at it, green on green action, we'd let them go. Not a problem for us. That's kind of how we've thought of the cartel wars. But if Jalisco New Generation gets control of a plaza, today Sinaloa, El Chapo's group, is the single largest crime group in the United States. Single largest. If Jalisco New Generation brings the Mexican drug war north of the border, we have a very different problem. And it's not a problem that law enforcement on this side of the border can solve. So whether you're looking at this from a demographic point of view, a drug point of view, a civil authority point of view, a strategic point of view, this is your next war. We haven't thought about how to fight it yet. The yellow is arid, the orange is desert, all this hash is verticality, roughly 1 mile above sea level. You know what I see when I look at that? Empty spaces, rugged terrain, dry terrain, an unsecurable border. This is Afghanistan. The same tool set that we use there, we're probably going to have to use in northern Mexico.
And that's from Peter Zeihan. This was his presentation to the Maneuver Center of Excellence at Fort Moore. I will, of course, link to this. This is from 2022. The situation has only gotten worse. New Generation now does control those plazas. I don't need to tell you about the condition on the border. We've all seen it with our own eyes. The current administration has made the situation 20 times worse. And as he's speaking to our military and justifiably telling them that that is their new war, we go back to this, to designate them as terrorists. The current authorization for the use of force in the worldwide war against terror would therefore be in place to use U.S. military force in Mexico. What will Mexico do? I don't think they'll just sit there and take it. So do we have an upcoming war with Mexico? With the drug cartels? We may be finding out sooner rather than later. I'm all for ending these drug cartels. These are violent, extreme organizations that need to go away. How do they do that? Well, the president feels that this is one way. We'll see if he's right. But that's all I got so for right now. I do appreciate you. Thank you for stopping in and listening. We'll talk soon.